The Art of War, the Essential Translation by Sun-Tzu, continued. Disc 3.
The Art of War with Commentary. Chapter 1. Making of Plans. Sun-Tzu. Planning means choosing generals, assessing the enemy, surveying the terrain, counting troops, measuring distances, and knowing the lie of the land. All of this takes place in the ceremonial temple. Sun-Tzu. Planning is all a matter of calculation, conducted in the ceremonial temple in terms of the 5 fundamentals listed below. We calculate our own strengths and weaknesses and the enemy's in terms of these 5 fundamentals, and from this calculation we can infer victory or defeat. Then, and only then, do we mobilize our troops. This is the most important stage of all in military strategy, and therefore occupies first place in the treatise.
Master Sun said,
Li Ling, writing 1997. This formula, found in other early philosophical classics, points to the likelihood that the text of The Art of War was compiled by disciples of the master.
War is a grave affair of state.
The Zor Commentary, Duke Cheng, 13th year. The 2 grave affairs of state are ritual and war.
It is a place of life and death, a road to survival and extinction, a matter to be pondered carefully.
Li Chuang. War is an instrument of ill omen. It brings life and death, survival and extinction. A grave endeavor indeed, and one that men, alas, undertake too lightly. Sun Bin's Art of War, Chapter 2. Victory in war can restore a state that has perished. It can revive extinct lineages. But failure to gain victory can lose territory. It can bring danger to the altars. So war must be pondered carefully. The man who takes pleasure in war will perish. He who benefits from victory incurs dishonor. War is not a thing to be enjoyed. Victory is not something to benefit from. The Way and Its Power, Chapter 31. War and its weapons are instruments of misfortune. One who has the way does not deal with them. They are not the instruments proper to the true gentleman who uses them only as a last resort, esteeming instead peace and tranquility. He sees no beauty in victory. To see beauty in victory is to rejoice in the killing of others. The Book of Master Mo, 479 to 381 BC. Chapter 17, Against Offensive War. Murdering one man is considered wrong and is punished with the death penalty. According to this argument, murdering 10 men should be 10 times more wrong and receive 10 death penalties, and likewise with murdering 100 men. The gentlemen of the world know these acts to be wrong, but the great wrong of attacking a state, that they do not find wrong, but praise it and call it right. They are not even aware that it is wrong. The Book of Mencius, 371 to 289 BC, 1:14, 2 to 3. When men fight because of a struggle for a city, they slaughter men till the city is filled with them. This is like leading the monster of the land to devour human flesh. Death is not enough for such a crime, and so skillful warriors should suffer the highest punishment. The Book of Mencius, 7:2-4. There are men who say, I am skillful at marshalling troops. I am a skillful warrior. They are great criminals. If the ruler of a state loves benevolence, he will have no enemy in the whole empire. Translator. Or, as the poet Edward Young, 1683 to 1765, expressed it in his poem Love of Fame, one to destroy is murder by the law, and gibbets keep the lifted hand in awe. To murder thousands takes a specious name, war's glorious art, and gives immortal fame.
There are 5 fundamentals for this deliberation, for the making of comparisons and the assessing of conditions. the way, heaven, earth, command, discipline.
Jiang Yu. The order here is clear. When troops are raised to put down an offending force, the ceremonial temple council first considers the compassion and good faith of the ruler, the way. Next, it looks into the favorable juncture or otherwise of the seasons, heaven. Then the ease or danger of the terrain, earth. Once these three aspects have been thoroughly examined, the council proceeds to choose a general to take command of the campaign, command. Finally, once the troops have crossed the border, the authority to give orders rests with the commanding general, discipline. This is the correct order.
The way causes men to be of one mind with their rulers, to live or die with them, and never to waver.
Jiang Yu. Govern with compassion and good faith, with integrity, the way, and righteousness, and the army will be of one mind. It will rejoice in its task. As the Book of Changes says, hexagram 58, Dewey the Joyous, lead the people into danger with joy, and they will forget death. Sun Bin's Art of War, Chapter 20. What determines victory or defeat is the way. The way and its power, Chapter 32. All under heaven will be drawn to the way, as streams and torrents flow into a great river or sea. The Book of Zhuangzi, 4th century BC, Chapter 12, Heaven and Earth. Look at distinctions in the light of the way, and the duty of sovereign and subject will be clear. The rulers of ancient times were without desire, and the world was satisfied. They were without action, and the 10,000 things were transformed. They were deep and silent, and the 100 clans were at rest. The Book of Lord Sheng, died 338 BC, Chapter 10, Methods of Warfare. All methods of war must be based on successful government. With this, men will not contend with one another, and not contending, they will have no thought of self-interest, but will regard their rulers' interests as their own. The Book of Master Huainan, circa 179 to 122 BC, Chapter 15. An army that has lost the way is weak, but if it possesses the way, it will be strong. If a general loses the way, he will be powerless, but if he has the way, he will be efficacious. If a country is imbued with the way, it will abide. If it loses the way, it will perish. Guo Huaruo, writing in 1984. The way here refers to the politics of government as practiced by the ruling landlord class. The men are the laboring masses, the serfs and slaves. When the government is relatively enlightened, then the men and the government are of one mind and cooperate. Translator. This is the first occurrence of the fundamental term Tao, spelled D-A-O, traditionally romanized as Tao, T-A-O, the way. The word can have an almost infinite range of meanings. Every field of human endeavor, war, statesmanship, archery, calligraphy, to name the first four that leap to mind, has its way. But every particularized, limited way is also encompassed within a greater cosmic way, the way of heaven and earth. So the way that can be spoken of is not the true way, the famous opening words of that wonderful Taoist work, The Way and Its Power, Chapter 1. Here it is clear that we are talking of the way of good government, where subjects can relate to their rulers as having the way. Despite the frequently repeated charge that Master Sun is an opportunist, a proponent of the dirtiest form of statecraft with unspeakable depths of duplicity, see Griffith, page 172, quoting James Murdoch's History of Japan, London, 1949, it is to be noted that here, at the very beginning of the treatise attributed to him, pride of place is given to the way, to the importance of the value system of any body politic when it contemplates war. It is debatable how much Master Sun's way has in common with the mystical way of the way and its power. The great Qin dynasty scholar Yu Yue (1821 to 1907), saw a close affinity between Master Sun and Taoism and affirmed the popular saying that the writers of military treatises all had their source in the way and its power. Wu, 1990, page 5. Master Sun is dealing with military success, and his way of war is in a sense a knack, a skill, a virtue similar to the Taoist way leading to spiritual success. But here he is simply reminding his disciples that, empirically speaking, moral power bestows military power. In this respect, he is echoed by Napoleon. In war, moral considerations make up 3/4 of the game. The real balance of power accounts only for the remaining quarter. Observations sur les affaires d'Espagne, 1808.
Heaven is yin and yang, cold and hot, the cycle of seasons.
Sun-Tzu. The Marshal's treatise says, "Do not mobilize troops in winter or summer out of love for the common people." Meng. Warfare models itself on the movement of heaven. Yin and yang alternate hard and soft, waxing and waning. A yin tactic is hidden, empty, static, and still. A yang tactic is light, swift, sudden, and forceful. In retreat, one uses yin. In attack, one uses yang. The two take forms that are forever changing. Thus the warrior models himself on heaven. Zhang Yu. Here, yin and yang have nothing to do with the calculations of divination, as they often did. Warfare has its own particular sense of yin and yang. As Fan Li, the great minister of Zhujiang, king of the state of Yu in the 5th century BC, put it, "Use yin last, use yang first. Exhaust the enemy's yang energy, nurture your own yin energy, and thus prevail." Humans have their yin and yang, female and male. Heaven has its yin and yang, morning and evening. In warfare, the variations of soft and hard, of indirect and direct strategy are the intermingling of human and celestial yin and yang. Cold and hot refer to winter and summer. In the Han Dynasty, during the campaign against the Xiongnu barbarians of the northern steppes, many soldiers lost their fingers. And when Ma Yuan led a campaign against the southern Mon barbarians, AD 43, many of his troops went down with plague. This was because they fought during winter and summer. The movement of the seasons refers to the varying physical conditions of the annual seasonal cycle, such as flooding and drought. Again, this has nothing to do with divination. Wang Shi. This refers to the entire way. Giles, the general economy of heaven, the 5 elements, the 4 seasons, wind and cloud, and other natural phenomena. A skillful ebbing and flowing with this aids the path to victory. The Book of Changes, Hexagram 55, Feng, Commentary on the Judgment. When the sun stands at midday, it begins to set. When the moon is full, it begins to wane. The fullness and emptiness of heaven and earth wax and wane with time. How much truer is this of men, or of spirits and gods? Translator. Master Sun introduces a second fundamental concept of early Chinese thought, that of the complementarity or alternating polarity of yin and yang. Every phenomenon, every process is viewed as a particular blend of these two forces, these two modes of energy. One yin, one yang, such is the way. Commentary on the Book of Changes. Indeed, the very building blocks of the Book of Changes itself are the broken yin line and the unbroken yang line. The two terms later acquired a specific range of meanings and were applied to every category of human experience, every kind of food, every bodily organ, every sickness, every terrestrial and celestial entity. But in this context, for Master Sun, they represent something simpler, the broad movement of nature as revealed in the cycle of the seasons. Quote, "The Chinese regard the fundamental ordering of the universe as being based on the interplay of these two groups of opposite but complementary aspects of the principle of energy." Unquote. Manfred Purkert, Chinese Medicine, New York, Morrow, 1982, page 68. We have here the first statement of the importance of flexibility, the quality that enables Master Sun's warrior to adapt and respond effectively to his ever-changing environment.
Earth is height and depth, distance and proximity, ease and danger, open and confined ground, life and death.
Mei Yao Chun. This refers to a knowledge of the terrain, its advantages and dangers. Jiang Yu. In deploying troops, it is essential to know the terrain. A knowledge of the distances involved makes it possible to choose between an indirect and a direct plan of action. A knowledge of the ease or otherwise of the terrain makes it possible to choose between the use of infantry or cavalry. A knowledge of the open or confined nature of the terrain makes it possible to judge the size of the force needed. A knowledge of the life and death of the terrain makes it possible to decide whether to do battle or disperse. Giles. The safety of an army, life and death, depends largely on its quickness to turn these geographical features to account. Wu Julang, writing in 1990, the first two items, height and depth, are only found in the excavated Han bamboo strips. Since they are meaningful details, they are added to the received text. Translator. Terrain is one of the prime concerns of any general anywhere. Understandably, it preoccupies Master Sun, and a discussion of its various aspects takes up a large part of chapters 8, 10, and 11.
Command is wisdom, integrity, compassion, courage, severity.
Cao Cao. These are the 5 virtues of a general. Du Mu. The kings of old valued the virtue of compassion above all, but the writers on war placed wisdom at the head of the list. A wise commander recognizes change and acts in accordance with it. A commander of integrity inspires his troops never to question rewards and punishments. A compassionate commander loves his own men, has sympathy for the enemy, and values hard work. A courageous commander seizes opportunities without procrastination and thereby achieves victory. A severe commander inspires awe and discipline in his men. Jia Lin. An excess of wisdom can lead to rebellion. Untempered compassion can cause weakness. Absolute integrity can cause folly. Brute courage can produce violence. Excessive severity can be cruel. All 5 virtues must be present together in a general. Each must play its role. Giles. The 5 cardinal Confucian virtues of the Chinese are humanity, or benevolence, here translated compassion, uprightness of mind, sometimes translated righteousness, absent here, self-respect, self-control, proper feeling, sometimes translated as ritual, also absent here, wisdom and sincerity or good faith, here translated as integrity. Here, wisdom and sincerity, integrity, are put before compassion, and the 2 military virtues of courage and severity substituted for uprightness of mind and self-respect. Translator. The discipline of Julius Caesar, 100 to 44 BC, was, quote, truly based on mutual understanding and self-respect, and his army grew to love him as a man and a soldier, and to believe in him as a leader, just as the British troops swore by Corporal John, and the French adored Le Petit Caporal. Like Marlborough and Napoleon, Caesar knew what the morale of an army means, knew how to create it and to sustain it. So trained, so led, troops will go anywhere and do anything. End quote. H.J. Edwards, Introduction to the Gallic War, Loeb Classical Library, 1958. Master Sun is here seeking to identify the elusive quality of leadership. Viscount Montgomery devoted a small book to this quality and included in his gallery of great world leaders Master Sun's 20th century disciple Mao Zedong, 1893 to 1976. The 1st century Greek strategist Onosander, in his treatise Strategikos, gave his own list of the qualities to be desired in a general. Quote, I believe we must choose a general because he is temperate, self-restrained, vigilant, frugal, hardened to labor, alert, as Homer says, quick as a bird or a thought, free from avarice, end quote. Chaliand, The Art of War in World History, Berkeley, University of California Press, 1994, page 154.
Discipline is organization.
Cao Cao, proper organization of regiments, of flags and insignia, of gongs and drums for retreat and attack.
Chain of command.
Cao Cao, proper distinction between the different spheres of responsibility of various officers.
Control of expenditure.
Translator. Caesar again. Quote, moral superiority alone does not ensure success in war. Soldiers are human, and armies cannot live or fight without supplies, nor move without transport. It is the mark of a good general that he appreciates and anticipates the material needs, and it is abundantly clear that Caesar's celeritas, swiftness in the field, was rendered possible only by the most careful and constant attention to all details of administration. End quote. Edwards' Introduction to the Gallic War.
Every commander is aware of these 5 fundamentals. He who grasps them wins. He who fails to grasp them loses.
Translator. This is Master Sun's constantly recurring dichotomy: win, lose, victory, defeat, success, failure.
For this deliberation, for the making of comparisons and the assessing of conditions, discover which ruler has the way.
Mei Yao Chun. Which ruler can win the trust of his men?
Which general has the ability?
Du Mu. Which general has wisdom, integrity, compassion, courage, and severity?
Which side has heaven and earth?
Jiang Yu. See which side is acting in accordance with the advantages of season and terrain. When Cao Cao attacked the state of Wu in the depths of winter, he made a blunder.
On which side is discipline more effective?
Cao Cao. Once a rule is established, it must be obeyed. Any offender must be put to death. Giles. Du Mu alludes to the remarkable story of Cao Cao, who was such a strict disciplinarian that once, in accordance with his own severe regulations against injury to standing crops, he condemned himself to death for having allowed his horse to shy into a field of corn. However, in lieu of losing his head, he was persuaded to satisfy his sense of justice by cutting off his hair. The Romance of the Three Kingdoms, Chapter 17. It was the summer, the 4th month of the 3rd year of the period Jian-An, 199 A.D. The army marched away. In the course of the march, they passed through a wheat district, and the grain was ready for harvesting, but the peasants had fled for fear, and the corn was uncut. Cao Cao caused it to be known all about that he was sent on the expedition by command of the emperor to capture a rebel and save the people. He could not avoid moving in the harvest season, but if anyone trampled down the corn, he should be put to death. Military discipline was so strict that the people need fear no damage. The people were very pleased and lined the road, wishing success to the expedition. When the soldiers passed wheat fields, they dismounted and pushed aside the stalks so that none were trampled down. One day, when Cao Cao was riding through the fields, a dove suddenly got up, startling the horse so that he swerved into the standing grain, and a large patch was trampled down. Cao at once called the provost marshal and bade him decree the sentence for the crime of trampling down corn. "How can I deal with your crime?" asked the provost marshal. "I made the rule and I have broken it. Can I otherwise satisfy public opinion?" He laid hold of the sword by his side and made to take his own life. All hastened to prevent him, and Guorjia said, "In ancient spring and autumn days, the laws were not applied to the persons of the most honorable. You are the supreme leader of a mighty army and must not wound yourself." Cao Cao pondered for a long time. At last he said, "Since there exists the reason just quoted, I may perhaps escape the death penalty." Then with his sword he cut off his hair and threw it on the ground, saying, "I cut off the hair as touching the head." This deed was a stimulus to discipline all through the army, so that not a man dared to be disobedient. Translator C.H. Brewitt Taylor.
Which army is the stronger?
Jiang Yu. In which army are the chariots most solid, the horses fittest, the officers bravest, the weapons keenest? In which camp does the drum for attack inspire shouts of joy, and the gong for retreat provoke cries of indignation?
Whose officers and men are better trained?
Du Yo. Master Wang said, "Without constant training, the officers will be fearful and undecided when confronting the enemy. Without constant training, the general will be wavering and irresolute when faced with the crisis."
In which army are rewards and punishments clearest?
Du Mu. Neither should be excessive. Giles. That is, on which side is there the most absolute certainty that merit will be rewarded and misdeeds summarily punished?
From these can be known victory and defeat.
Mei Yao Chern. By unraveling the true circumstances, assessing conditions, the outcome, whether it be victory or defeat, can be known. Jiang Yu. If all 7 of these factors are favorable, then victory is certain before battle has been engaged. If they are unfavorable, then defeat is equally certain. This is the knowing referred to.
Heed my plan. Employ me, and victory is surely yours. I will stay. Do not heed my plan, and even if you did employ me, you would surely be defeated. I will depart.
Jiang Yu. Master Sun is trying to persuade the king of Wu to employ his services. Guor Huaruo. It was a unique characteristic of the Warring States period that military advisors could pick and choose where to serve, like Wu Qi in the state of Wei and Yu Yi in the state of Yan.
Settle on the best plan. Exploit the dynamic within. Develop it without.
Cao Cao. Beyond the regular rules. Mei Yao Chern. Settle on the basic plan within. Develop it strategically without, thus helping to bring about victory. Jia Lin. Calculate the advantages, settle on a plan, then assess the enemy and develop ruses to exploit the situation strategically. These maneuvers include attacks from the flank or ambuscades on the enemy's rear to supplement straightforward, direct confrontation. Translator. This is the first occurrence of the key word shi, dynamic potential energy of the situation, which will be explored at greater length in Chapter 5.
Follow the advantage and master opportunity. This is the dynamic.
Cao Cao. The mastery comes from the opportunity itself. The opportunity is mastered through events. Du Mu. These are the strategic initiatives beyond the regular rules referred to by Cao Cao. The strategic situation cannot be seen in advance. Sometimes what is to the enemy's disadvantage reveals our own advantage, and vice versa. These are the elements that enable us to master the opportunity and achieve victory. Giles. Master Sun, as a practical soldier, will have none of the bookish theoric. He cautions us here not to pin our faith to abstract principles. For, as Jiang Yu puts it, while the main laws of strategy, the regular rules, can be stated clearly enough for the benefit of all and sundry, you must be guided by the actions of the enemy in attempting to secure a favorable position in actual warfare. On the eve of the Battle of Waterloo, Lord Uxbridge, commanding the cavalry, went to the Duke of Wellington in order to learn what his plans and calculations were for the morrow, because, as he explained, he might suddenly find himself commander-in-chief and would be unable to frame new plans in a critical moment. The Duke listened quietly and then said, "Who will attack the first tomorrow, I or Bonaparte?" "Bonaparte," replied Lord Uxbridge. Well, continued the Duke, Bonaparte has not given me any idea of his projects, and as my plans will depend on his, how can you expect me to tell you what mine are? Sir W. Fraser, Words on Wellington. Translator. Along with the pair Sheng Bai, victory, defeat, the pair Li Hai, advantage, disadvantage, gain, harm, plays a very large part in Master Sun's thinking.
The way of war is a way of deception.
Cao Cao. In war there is nothing constant. The way lies in deception and cunning. Shang Yu. War must be based upon righteousness, but victory depends on deception and cunning. Li Chuan. In war there cannot be too much cunning. Mei Yao Chen. Without cunning, it is impossible to master opportunity and defeat the enemy. Giles. The truth of this pithy and profound saying of Master Sun's will be admitted by every soldier. Colonel Henderson, 1854 to 1903, tells us that Wellington, great in so many military qualities, was especially distinguished by, quote, the extraordinary skill with which he concealed his movements and deceived both friend and foe, end quote. Translator. As François Julien points out, page 167 to 68, this is more than a trite piece of advice to be tricky for the sake of it. On this basis of deception, of dissimulation and concealment, is built the whole principle of manipulation of the enemy, which lies at the heart of Master Sun's strategic thinking. It is a question of unsettling the enemy, getting him into a weak situation, ébranler l'adversaire, or of getting him to get himself into such a situation, rather than of directly confronting him and fighting it out, the heroism of action. By these means, we gradually erode the enemy's capacity to resist.
When able, feign inability.
Zhang Yu. When in reality strong, appear to be weak. When in reality full of courage, appear to be fearful.
When deploying troops, appear not to be.
Du Mu. Conceal the true situation with cunning. Keep it hidden from the enemy. If the enemy can observe the true state of affairs, he will know how to react. As the historical records have it in the biography of Gu Jian, king of Wu, a hawk must keep out of sight before it swoops.
When near, appear far. When far, appear near.
Mei Yao Chen. So that the enemy cannot predict your movements.
Lure with bait.
Du Mu. The Zhao general Li Mu, died 229 BC, charged with defending the northern frontier against the nomadic Xiongnu, released large numbers of cattle and their herders into open country, which induced the Xiongnu barbarians to advance a little. General Li then pretended to retreat, leaving a few thousand stragglers as a decoy. The Khan of the Xiongnu, when he learned of this, was overjoyed and advanced into the open at the head of a large force of men. General Li then took them by surprise and attacked with a pincer formation from left and right, crushing them and killing over 100,000 of their cavalry.
Strike with chaos.
Zhang Yu. Feign chaos, lure the enemy out, and then strike. In the war between Wu and Yu, Wu used 3,000 criminals to give an appearance of disorder and to draw out the Yu forces. The criminals ran chaotically hither and thither or surrendered. As a result, Yu engaged battle, only to be defeated by Wu.
If the enemy is full, be prepared. If strong, avoid him.
Shang Yu. As the classic says, in engaging the enemy, discover where he is abundant and where deficient. Abundant means full or solid. Deficient means empty or weak. Wherever the enemy's situation is solid, we should adopt a plan for dealing with an invincible foe and not act lightly. In the words of Li Jing's Mirror of War, observe emptiness and advance, observe fullness and halt. Du Yo. When his stores are well stocked and full, and his troops keen, retreat and wait for him to become weak and lax. Observe the change and respond to it. Translator. For the pivotal pair, empty, full, see Chapter 6.
If he is angry, disconcert him.
Zhang Yu. When he is by nature obstinate and irascible, insult him and make him angry. He will be provoked and confused and will advance recklessly, without thought for the consequences. He Yan Shi. As when the Han troops succeeded by dint of repeated taunts and insults in provoking the Chu forces under the Grand Marshal Xiao Ju into the battle of the river Tsi. In 203 BC, Cao Ju, provoked to a fit of rage, disobeyed the orders of his sovereign Zhang Yu and led a fatal sortie from the city of Chengjiao. His troops were halfway across the river when the Han army fell on them and routed them. Cao Ju subsequently cut his own throat. This historical incident is a favorite with the commentators. See Chapter 3.
If he is weak, stir him to pride.
Du Yo. When the enemy mobilizes his troops and advances in anger, make an outward show of weakness and docility and thereby heighten his ambition. Wait for him to slacken and then strike. Master Wang of old said that the skillful tactician plays with his adversary as a cat plays with a mouse, pitting his wisdom against his enemy, first feigning weakness and immobility, then suddenly pouncing on him. Translator. Du Yo took this sentence in a different sense. Quote, pretend to be weak yourself, end quote. Often different commentators took the same passage to mean radically different things. Here I have included Du Yo's comment because of Master Wang's memorable cat comparison.
If he is relaxed, harry him.
Zhang Yu. Keep your own strength intact. Let him wear himself out. Wang Shi. Employ a large number of surprise tactics. When the enemy comes out, retreat. When the enemy retreats, come out. When he comes to the rescue of his left flank, go for his right. When he reinforces his right flank, go for his left. Harry him in this way.
If his men are harmonious, split them.
Cao Cao. Send spies to split his forces. Li Chuan. Break their understanding, split lord from subject, and then attack. When the state of Qin was launching an attack on the state of Zhao, 260 BC, the minister of Qin, the Marquis of Yin, sent spies to the king of Zhao, saying, "We men of Qin are afraid that you will put Zhao Gua in command. Lian Po, the current commander, would be easier for us to deal with." The king of Zhao fell for this little ruse and replaced Lian Po with Zhao Gua. As a result, at the Battle of Changping, 400,000 troops from Zhao surrendered and were killed. See Records of the Grand Historian, Chapter 73, biographies of Bo Qi and Wang Jian. Zhang Yu. Split lord from subject, split ally from ally, split them, and then attack them.
Attack where he is unprepared. Appear where you are unexpected.
Meng. Attack the void, the weakest point. Take him where he is slackest. Never let the enemy know where to prepare his defense. Hence the saying, in war the knack lies in being without form, invisible. As the ancient duke said, the most effective movement is the one that is unexpected. The best plan is the one that is unknown.
This is victory in warfare. It cannot be divulged in advance.
Cao Cao. Like a secret. War has no constant dynamic, just as water has no constant form. It is a matter of adapting flexibly to the changing circumstances of the enemy. And these cannot be known, let alone divulged, in advance. Hence the saying, measure the enemy in your mind, spot the opportunity with your eye. Mei Yao Chern. It is when one is face to face with the enemy that one has to respond to changing circumstances and decide strategies. How can such things be talked of in advance?
Victory belongs to the side that scores most in the temple calculations before battle. Defeat belongs to the side that scores least in the temple calculations before battle. Most spells victory, least spells defeat. None surer defeat. I see it in this way.
Sun-Tzu, according to the art of war.
And the outcome is apparent.
The Book of Lord Sheng, Chapter 10, Methods of Warfare. By estimating the strength of the enemy and by examining one's own forces, victory or defeat may be known beforehand. If the policy originates in the temple calculations, then it will lead to victory, be the leader good or inferior. Records of the Grand Historian, Chapter 8. The first emperor of Han said to Wang Lin, "I know how to plan campaigns with counting rods in the headquarters tent." Zhang Yu. In ancient times, before the beginning of a campaign, the general would conduct ceremonial deliberations in his field temple and make calculations. With deep and far-sighted strategies, planning achieves a great deal, and in this way victory is won before battle is joined. With superficial planning, little is gained and defeat is certain. Much planning spells victory, less planning a less certain outcome, no planning, certain defeat. Hence the saying, "The victorious army is victorious first and seeks battle later. The defeated army does battle first and seeks victory later." See Chapter 4, page 156. Victory and defeat lie in the presence or absence of planning. Li Ling, writing in 1997, many examples of early calculating devices, counting rods, using bamboo or wooden tallies of a fixed length have been found in recent excavations. In this chapter, calculations with such rods are meant, whereby the relative advantages of the opposing forces are measured, our own strengths and weaknesses, and those of the enemy. This use of calculation to determine a course of action is of very ancient origin, and ethnographers have uncovered many relics of it. The Chinese words signifying calculate, measure, scheme, and plan all have the bamboo radical and are all linked with this form of counting. Wang Shi. Anxious lest the student be perplexed by his earlier statement, victory cannot be divulged in advance, Master Sun here restates the broad principles of his first section on planning. Translator. Several contemporary commentators have compared this pre-war temple council of Master Sun's time to a form of early war game, a careful simulation assessing a range of different factors and calculating from them the underlying dynamic of the situation and the almost certain outcome. At the end of his first chapter, Master Sun returns to the crucial importance of such deliberations. Chapter 2. Waging of War. Sun-Tzu. The warrior wishing to wage war must first calculate the cost and should always feed his men off the enemy. Zhang Yu. Once planning and calculation are completed, chariots and horses must be made ready, weapons honed, and equipment prepared, provisions transported, expenses estimated, all in preparation for battle. So this section follows making of plans.
Master Sun said, "In war, for an army of 1,000 four-horse swift chariots, 1,000 hide-armored wagons."
Zhang Yu. The lighter swift chariots were used for combat, the heavier hide wagons for defense.
For 100,000 mail-clad soldiers,
Li Chuan. Foot soldiers.
with provisions for 400 miles.
Sun-Tzu. 400 miles beyond the frontier.
Allowing for expenses at home and at the front, dealings with envoys and advisers.
Translator. As Niu Guoping and Wang Fucheng point out, among the advisers whose expenses had to be met would have been such individuals as Master Sun himself, a native of the northeastern state of Qi, and Wu Zizyu, a native of the central southern state of Chu. both employed as advisors by the southeastern state of Wu.
Glue and lacquer, repairs to chariots and armor. The daily cost of all this will exceed 1,000 taels of silver.
Zhang Yu, a round figure for the heavy expenses involved, not including the money required for paying bribes. Records of the Grand Historian, Chapter 112. It is said in the art of war, for an army of 100,000 soldiers one must spend 1,000 taels of silver a day. The Qin forces were constantly raising large numbers of troops, several hundreds of thousands at a time. Although they succeeded in defeating armies, slaying generals, and taking prisoners from among the barbarians, this only had the effect of stirring up bitter hatred and deep resentment toward Qin. It did not make up for the huge costs to the country. To empty the state coffers and to wear out the common people simply in order to have one's way with a foreign nation is not a sound policy.
In war, victory should be swift.
Translator, Julius Caesar again. Quote, "The keynote of Caesar's generalship was speed, celeritas. He was swift to calculate and decide, swift to move, and by movement to keep the initiative, to surprise the enemy and divide his strength. Swift in the hour of battle to seize the tactical opportunity to remedy the tactical mistake. Swift always in pursuit, knowing full well that only he who pursues till he can go no further secures the full fruit of victory." Such speed in war as Caesar's was no gift of fortune. It depended on certain conditions in himself and his army. He had an energy which was invincible and irresistible. He had that courage which ignores fear or danger, but which refuses to be foolhardy. In his expeditions, he combined boldness and caution. He fought his battles not only of design, but as opportunity offered. Edwards, quoting Suetonius in his introduction to the Gallic War.
If victory is slow, men tire, morale sags, sieges exhaust strength.
Zhang Yu. When a campaign is protracted in order to secure victory, the men become weary and their morale sags. Laying siege to a city hundreds of miles from home inevitably exhausts one's strength. Translator. As narrated in an episode from the popular novel The Romance of the Three Kingdoms, Sun-Tzu resorted to a characteristically cold-blooded ruse in order to raise the sagging morale of his troops and bring to a successful conclusion the siege of Shuchun. Sun-Tzu's besieging army of 170,000 required vast stores of grain, but the surrounding districts, stricken by drought, could offer no aid. Cao pressed for battle, but General Li Feng kept within the confines of the camp. After another month, Cao, faced with dwindling supplies, borrowed 100,000 bushels of grain from Sun-Tzu, but he did not distribute it. During the emergency, the commissariat chief Ren Shun and the granary officer Wang Hu petitioned Cao. "There is not enough to feed so many. What shall we do?" Cao ordered him to find a way of tiding us over. "And if they complain?" asked Wang Hu. "I have a plan for that eventuality," Cao assured him. Mao Zedong comments he was certainly not going to tell Wang his plan at this stage. The officer gave out reduced rations as ordered. Meanwhile, Cao sent his men around to the camps and learned that soldiers were accusing him of cheating them. He then secretly summoned Wang Hu, the granary officer, and said, "There is something of yours I would like to borrow to pacify the soldiers. I hope you will not begrudge it." Mao Zedong, he was unlikely to begrudge the loan, but it would be a once-only transaction. "What do I have," Wang Hu answered, "that could be of use to your excellency?" "Your head," Cao replied, "to show the men." "But I have committed no crime," cried the terrified officer. "I know that," Cao said, "but I must put you to death or the army will revolt. I will look after your family personally, so have no concern on their account." Before Wang Hu could say more, the executioners had received their orders and were already pushing him out. They cut off his head and stuck it on a pole with a signboard reading, "Wang Hu, duly punished by military law for purposefully assigning short rations and stealing from the granary. This measure improved the troops' morale.
Protracted campaigns strain the public treasury.
Zhang Yu. With a daily expense of 1,000 taels if the campaign is protracted, of course the public treasury will be insufficient. Emperor Wu of the Han Dynasty, reigned 141 to 87 BC, embarked on a policy of extensive exploration and protracted expansion of the empire that exhausted the public treasury. He lived to regret it. History of the Former Han, Chapter 94. The advisor Yang You, 1st century A.D., gave the following counsel to the usurper Wang Meng on the inherent difficulty of supplying troops in extended campaigns against the Xiongnu barbarians. On average, for a 300-day journey, one soldier needs to consume 18 bushels of rice, which has to be transported by ox. The ox itself also needs to be fed, which adds another 20 pecks to the weight. Given that the nature of the Xiongnu terrain is desert with little water or grass, the ox will not survive 100 days. The remaining quantity of food will be too heavy for a soldier to carry.
If men are tired, morale low, strength exhausted, treasure spent, then the feudal lords will exploit the disarray and attack. This even the wisest will be powerless to mend.
Zhang Yu. As when the state of Wu attacked Chu 506 BC, took the city of Ying, and stayed there a long time without returning home. During the army's protracted absence, the forces of Yu invaded Wu. Even counselors of the distinction of Wu Zhishu and Master Sun were powerless to save Wu from the disastrous consequences. Translator. Feudal lords was an expression used collectively for the various rival states into which the feudal Zhou kingdom disintegrated during the spring and autumn 722 to 481 BC and warring states 403 to 221 BC periods.
I have heard that in war, haste can be folly, but have never seen delay that was wise.
Zheng Hao. As the saying goes, a clap of thunder leaves no time to cover the ears. A flash of lightning strikes before the eyes can blink. Du Mu. In obtaining victory, it is supreme speed that counts, even if the tactics are foolish. Speed avoids the twin pitfalls of expense and exhaustion. This is wisdom. He Yan Shi. Haste may be foolish, but at least it does not expend energy and treasure. Protracted operations may be very wise, but they may also bring calamity in their train. Shang Yu. So long as victory is achieved, foolish haste is better than wise delay. Giles. What Master Sun says is that while speed may sometimes be injudicious, tardiness can never be anything but foolish, if only because it means impoverishment to the nation. The classic example of Fabius Cunctator, Quintus Fabius Maximus, the delayer, Roman general in the Second Punic War against Hannibal, died 203 BC, will inevitably occur to the mind. That general, famous for his cautious delaying tactics, deliberately measured the endurance of Rome against that of Hannibal's isolated army, because it seemed to him that the latter was more likely to suffer from a long campaign in a strange country. But it is a moot question whether his tactics would have proved successful in the long run.
No nation has ever benefited from a protracted war.
The Spring and Autumn Annals says, "War is like fire. Those who cannot bring hostilities to a close burn themselves out." Translator. As John Dryden, 1631 to 1701, observed in the play Tyrannic Love, all delays are dangerous in war. According to the Chinese general Dao Hanshang, General Westmoreland quoted this very sentence from Master Sun as his argument for withdrawing his troops from Vietnam.
Without a full understanding of the harm caused by war, it is impossible to understand the most profitable way of conducting it.
Giles. that is, with rapidity. Only one who knows the disastrous effects of a long war can realize the supreme importance of rapidity in bringing it to a close. Du yo. When planning a campaign, if one does not consider the potential disasters, one will not be able to reap the benefits.
The skillful warrior never conscripts troops a second time, never transports provisions a third.
Cao Cao. Seize victory when you first draft your troops. Do not return to raise more men. Giles. Once war is declared, he will not waste precious time in waiting for reinforcements, nor will he turn his army back for fresh supplies, but crosses the enemy's frontier without delay. This may seem an audacious policy to recommend, but with all great strategists, from Julius Caesar to Napoleon Bonaparte, the value of time, that is, being a little ahead of your opponent, has counted for more than either numerical superiority or the nicest calculations with regard to commissariat.
He brings equipment from home, but forages off the enemy, and so his men have plenty to eat.
Zhang Yu. Large quantities of food are difficult to transport. If the army has to have its grain transported over a distance of 400 miles, the troops will have a hungry look about them. Records of the Grand Historian, Chapter 92, Biography of Han Xun, Marquis of Huaiyin. The troops of Han were threatening the state of Zhao. Li Josh, Lord of Guangwu, advised Chen Yu, minister of the King of Zhao. I have heard it said that when provisions must be transported 400 miles, the soldiers have a hungry look, and when fuel must be gathered before the mess is prepared, the army seldom sleeps with a full stomach. On a march of several hundred miles under such circumstances, their provisions are sure to be in the rear. I beg you to lend me a force of 30,000 surprise troops, which I can lead by a secret route to cut off their supply wagons.
Supplying an army at a distance drains the public coffers and impoverishes the common people.
Zhang Yu. Of course it does. If the strength of 700,000 households has to be used to supply food for an army of 100,000 men at a distance of 400 miles. Du Mu. The Book of Master Zhuan, circa 250 B.C., says, transporting grain 100 miles uses up a year's stocks of grain, 150 miles, 2 years, 200, and the common people begin to look hungry.
Where an army is close at hand, prices rise. When prices rise, the common people spend all they have. When they spend all, they feel the pinch of taxes and levies. Strength is depleted on the battlefield. Families at home are destitute.
Translator. Here I follow the bamboo strip text from Shandong as advocated by Li Ling, writing in 1997, page 43, and Wu Julung, pages 28 to 29.
The common people lose 7/10 of their wealth. 6/10 of the public coffers are spent on broken chariots, worn-out horses, armor and helmets, crossbows and arrows, spears and bucklers, lances and shields, draft animals, heavy wagons. So a wise general feeds his army off the enemy. 1 peck of enemy provisions is worth 20 carried from home. 1 picul of enemy fodder is worth 20 carried from home.
Zhang Yu. Because 20 cartloads will be consumed in the process of transporting 1 cartload to the front, or even more if the terrain is difficult. Translator. I have taken a certain liberty with the exact measurements, since Master Sun is more concerned with relative amounts. At this point in the text, the commentators, ancient and modern, write at inordinate length on the exact quantities indicated by the terms used.
The killing of an enemy stems from wrath.
Du Mu. As when the Qi general Tian Dan was defending the city of Jimo and deliberately caused the Yan army to cut off the noses of their Qi prisoners and to exhume the bodies of the Qi dead. He Yan Shi amplifying Du Mu. When the Yan army surrounded the city of Jimo in the state of Qi, 279 BC, they cut off the noses of all their Qi prisoners. In the story as related by Sima Qian in his Records of the Grand Historian, chapter 82, which for the most part He Yan Shi is repeating verbatim, it is in fact the Qi general Tian Dan's own cunning stratagem to suggest this nasty idea to the men of Yan. The men of Qi were enraged by this, and as a result defended the city all the more courageously. Tian Dan then sent a double agent to misinform the Yan troops, saying, "Our people fear that you will dig up the graves outside the city walls and dishonor our ancestors. The very thought makes us tremble with horror." Sure enough, the Yang soldiers went ahead and dug up the graves, then burned the corpses. The inhabitants of Jimo witnessed this desecration from the city walls and wept with rage. Now they wished to go out and do battle, their wrath kindled tenfold. Tian Dan knew that his troops were ready and proceeded to inflict a crushing defeat on the army of Yan. Translator. In the records of the Grand Historian, Tian Dan is credited with several other cunning ruses, including the idea of launching through breaches in the city walls 1,000 bulls, swathed in red silk and painted in bright colors to look like dragons, their tails soaked in oil and blazing. The Grand Historian Sima Qian comments, quoting Master Sun, chapter 5, "In warfare, engage directly, secure victory indirectly. The skillful general uses both direct and indirect with infinite variety." Tian Dan's tactics were unorthodox. At first he was yielding like a young virgin, then swift as an escaping hare. This whole historical episode is referred to again and again by Master Sun's traditional commentators. Zhang Yu. In the military classic Master Wai Liao it says, "What stirs the people to make war is their spirit, qi. When their spirit is kindled to wrath, then they will do battle."
The fighting for booty stems from a desire for reward.
Du Yo. If the men know that victory will be richly rewarded, they will brave any danger and gladly enter the fray. Such is the beguiling force of material reward.
In chariot fighting, when more than 10 enemy chariots are captured, the man to take the first should be rewarded. Change the enemy's chariot flags and standards.
Cao Cao. Make them the same as ours.
Mingle their chariots with ours.
Zhang Yu. They should not be sent into battle in a formation of their own.
Treat prisoners of war kindly and care for them.
Zhang Yu. Treat prisoners of war with compassion and good faith, and they will be all the more useful.
Use victory over the enemy to enhance your own strength.
He Yan Shi. Use the enemy to defeat the enemy and be all the stronger.
In war, prize victory, not a protracted campaign.
Meng. Prize a swift victory and a speedy return. Mei Yao Chun. Swiftness saves expense and spares the people.
The wise general is a lord of destiny. He holds the nation's peace or peril in his hands.
He Yan Shi. The general is responsible for the destiny and well-being of the nation. The scarcity of fine generals has always been a source of calamity.
This book is continued on Disc 4.